Hi everyone, this is Howie Ree. This is a video for those of you interested in careers in tech and those of you interested in working in startups after you graduate from the Duke MBA program. I am the Managing Director at Fuqua's Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, as well as the Managing Director for Student Programs at the Duke Innovation and Entrepreneurship Initiative. I'm also a Fuqua alum and graduated from the daytime MBA program in 2004. So recently, Poets and Quants put together an article talking about a record number of tech hires from Duke. And this made me think about this talk, which I'm about to give you, which I've given in different forms over the last 2 years. And so I've updated it, and I hope you're going to find some great information here. So here's a bunch of logos of Duke MBA alums that have ended up at these companies: Airbnb, Palantir, Netflix, Intel, the list goes on and on. And this is something that I didn't quite realize was possible when I was an MBA student at Duke back in 2002, 2004. Um, and I wish that somebody had told me that these opportunities were available to me, especially the ones that weren't necessarily coming to campus. And so that's what I am telling you in this video. So let's just jump right in. Um, it's very rare that people talk about numbers when it comes to salaries, compensation, things like that. So I did a survey of a number of Duke MBA alums, anonymous survey, and I just said, tell me your compensation packages for your first job out of business school, working in tech companies. So this is not investment banking. This is not consulting. These are all, for the most part, tech companies. I'd say 95 to 99% were tech companies. So you can see here that on the left here, the spread was pretty big. $260,000 was one person's total comp package out of business school. 85,000 was the min, and the median was about 150K. This includes everything: base, bonus, and equity. And you can see different ranges there for different portions of the package. I also asked people, what was your first job title? And so you can see a variety of titles here. I won't go through all of them. I think that the ones that tend to capture the most interest of Duke MBA students are product manager and product marketing manager, and business development. Those tend to be the ones that Duke MBA students tend to focus in on, but you can see that there's a lot of different titles that are out there. I then asked, what was your length of tenure at your first job? How many years were you there? And um, this surprised me a little bit. 1.5 years was the median. Some people were at their first job for 6.5 years. Some were there for less than for about a year. And I asked some people, just talk a little bit about that. Some people, they got recruited to a different company, and some people kind of chose big companies like Apple just to say this is a great place to learn. So, um, this is something that I noticed when I was a student, when I graduated from business school. I noticed that it wasn't too surprising that people would switch jobs after 1 or 2 years, and that's in fact what happened in my data set. What about locations? Where do people end up when they graduate from business school? We're going to talk more about locations later on, but San Francisco dominating the list here, and Seattle, mostly representing Amazon and Microsoft, and then kind of a smattering of other cities there. So I put together a document. I think at this point I've got about 40 interviews, and there's a link here. a bit.ly link down in the bottom right here. I recently updated this in 2018, even though the original was in 2016. And I'll just show you what that looks like. Here's a number of people that are Duke MBA alums that I interviewed, and I wrote up their responses to, or they wrote up their responses to a bunch of questions that I sent their way. So for many of you, you're not sure what roles are out there in tech companies. And so I put these together to help demystify what roles there are and what you do in those roles. So check out this document. It's a really good one. Let's talk about a few people that are Duke alums that ended up working in tech. So Naveed, um, he was a business solutions engineer before Fuqua, graduated in 2013, and went to eBay. He was a product manager there. Then he went to a tech company, Tango, which I think raised about 100 million in funding, and was a product manager there for about a year, and then ended up going to Google, where he still is to this day. Natasha, product manager before coming to business school. She was at Deloitte, graduated in 2013 as well. She ended up at Yelp right after business school, then moved up to Seattle to go to Amazon, and then joined Ease, where she still is to this day. Ryan. So Ryan, before business school, was in the military. He was a naval aviator, and he graduated in 2009. He went to Apple, and he did operations at Apple. Ended up being a manager, helping to launch new iPhones, and then got recruited to Nest, which is now a part of Google, and has had a variety of roles at Nest over the years. Josh. Josh, before Fuqua, worked at Intel, where he was doing partnerships. He got his MBA in 2008. He ended up at a tech startup called Meebo. Um, Meebo ended up, I think, being acquired by Yahoo. So that's how Josh ended up at Yahoo. Um, After a couple years at Yahoo, he moved down to Los Angeles and started Stack Social, and now called Stack Commerce, and they've done really well. And they've raised about $1 million. It's probably more at this point. Chris, before business school, was in biz dev. He graduated in 2005, ended up at Microsoft for 6 years, a variety of roles there. Microsoft can be a great training ground. And then jumped over to Facebook, where he has had a variety of roles, and I believe is still the VP of product for internet.org. So he's had a really neat career. Matt. So Matt, before Fuqua, he had co-founded a startup that had raised money. At Fuqua, he graduated in 2005 and then ended up going to Deloitte and was a consultant for 3 years. He then was back in the San Francisco Bay Area, started a company, teamrankings.com, was there for a few years, and then met the founder of Pocket. And Matt was the first hire. He became CTO. They got funding from Google Ventures and others, and were acquired by Mozilla in 2017. Kira, who's a classmate of mine and a friend. Kira, before Fuqua, was in biz dev, and then she graduated in 2004. She went to Intuit in the Bay Area, had a variety of roles, mostly in marketing, and kind of progressed really well in that career. She ended up doing some consulting after Intuit, and then got recruited to join Lytro, a camera company with some innovative technology, and was the VP of marketing there. Then she got recruited to Trulia, where she was the chief marketing officer for a year. Trulia and Zillow merged, I think Zillow acquired Trulia, if memory serves. But though I think both brands live on. And then got recruited to Lyft, 2014 to 2016. Had a great run there. While during her tenure, I remember there were a lot of neat videos, including Shaquille O'Neal being an undercover Lyft driver. Those were pretty fun. And is now CEO of Art.com. Katie, another classmate of mine. So before business school, was a product manager, uh, graduating 2004. Then she went the consumer packaged goods route, CPG. She went to General Mills, great training ground. Was a marketing manager there for 6 years. Ended up at Post Foods, and then jumped over to tech, Amazon. She had some really interesting experiences helping launch Amazon Instant Video, which I think a lot of us have enjoyed. That's all the videos that are part of the Prime subscription. Um, and then helped launch Amazon Elements. This is Amazon's private label brand, and helped launch Amazon Pantry. So lots of really interesting things that Katie has been a part of, and and ended up moving over to Hotwire, which I believe is a part of Microsoft, and she is still at Hotwire. So, what does this all mean for working at a startup, if anything? Well, in my opinion, and I think I see a lot of business school students um, not do this well, and a lot of Duke students in general, not just in the business school, is to be picky. Now, there's a second part of this that I'll tell you about, but be picky. You want to choose wisely. Not all startups are created equal. Um, and the way this usually manifests itself is somebody says, hey, I really want to work at a startup to get that experience. And um, there are so many startups, thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands, and your experience can vary greatly depending on where you are. So um, I think that a guiding principle for you, and this comes from Y Combinator, the top accelerator in the world, which has spawned Airbnb, Reddit, Coinbase, um, Dropbox, Square, and many other companies. So Y Combinator is the best known startup accelerator, and this is their free startup school, which I highly recommend you watch the videos. And this is the first slide presented by Sam Altman, who is the president of Y Combinator. And what he says is, the goal of the startup is to create a product so good that people tell their friends. And he emphasizes that this is about 80% of success for a startup. And I think that to translate this for your career, I would recommend that you choose startups that have a product so good that people are telling their friends about it and that makes you excited, really excited at the prospect of working for that startup. So when I say be picky, I think this is one key lens to look at. But to counterbalance being picky, pick a lot of companies. So I see too many Duke MBA students who come to me for career advice. And when I ask them which companies are on their list that they're seriously considering working for, I'd say that on average, it's less than 10 that they're really, really excited about. A lot of times they've put together a list that has a lot of companies, maybe 50, but what they'll say in the meeting is 40 of those companies are ones that they just kind of put on there to do it, and they haven't really gone through the process of picking a lot of companies that they would love to work at. So pick a lot of companies. Um, my my rule of thumb is to start with 20 to 50, but we should do what this Duke MBA alum from 2015, Will, did. Will created this list of 150 companies. You can't see all of them. And he was mostly targeting the Bay Area. tech companies. And the filter, again, was, this is a company that I would be excited about working at. And during his time in business school, he had about 100 informational interviews with companies on this list. I've made this list available to you. There's a bit.ly link right there. So I show this to people again and again, Duke MBA students, and for the most part, people can't believe that this is the way to go. They're like, there's no way I can find 150 companies, let alone contact 150 companies. And so you might be thinking that right now. And what I will tell you is you can do it, and I think you should do it in order to increase your chances of having a successful search. Let's talk about why. So this is a neat article from a person who was applying to a bunch of companies after completing some training, not quite an MBA, but completed some interesting training. And I thought these numbers were really interesting. The way I describe it, applying to a company is usually a black hole. And I think this kind of hints at this, which is that if you just apply to a company, the default response is to not get a response. So, take that Duke MBA student that only has 10 companies that are on their list. They apply to 10, they don't hear from 10, and they're distraught because they're like, I've done everything I can. I've applied to 10 companies and nobody's reaching out to me. What is going wrong? And one of the first things I say is your list is too short and you need to really expand that list. One of this author's key points was, if you're just applying, your yield is going to be low, but if you can get in touch with somebody, that's when things start to click. And so let's talk a little bit about that. Here's a Duke alum, Adam Besvinick, who ended up going to another business school. And he wrote about his job search experience throughout business school and before business school. And I absolutely love this paragraph. I've shown this paragraph to hundreds of students. And what Adam is saying here is that before business school even started, between March and September, he cold emailed 150 people and had 90 meetings and calls. And again, for those of you that are skeptical that you can find 150 companies, let alone have conversations with 150 companies, I would say that there are a lot of people like Adam in the world who are willing to put themselves out there and willing to, reach out and have these conversations. And, unfortunately, it's a competitive world, and you are to some degree competing with, the Adams of the world. And if you're not willing to put yourself out there to try to have those conversations, it's going to put you at a disadvantage. So, network. So a lot of you, what you'll do is you'll say, okay, I found somebody that I want to talk to, and I sent them a LinkedIn message, and I never heard back from them. Well, what I will tell you is that, I receive a lot of LinkedIn messages, and for the most part, LinkedIn is just something that I barely respond to. Like, I will check it occasionally, but I much prefer email. So use this tool, Clearbit Connect, and find the email address for the person you want to contact. Okay, so what are you going to write? So this email here is an email from one of my Duke MBA students who had the best conversion rate I had seen of getting meetings from emails. So this template I've shared very much, very broadly, and I'm happy to share with you. And it works well. It's not perfect, but it works well. I think her hit rate was about 90%. It was crazy. It was really amazing. I'm not going to say that that's going to be true for all of you. She did have great experience. reaching out to people. But I think that, this is the kind of email you want to send. You want to send an email that's compelling enough that a person who's really busy will say, yeah, I want to talk to that person. Now, so many students are so busy that the process of talking to a lot of people just kind of overwhelms them, and they end up not doing a great job with it. So some of you are organized enough to use a spreadsheet to keep track of everyone you want to talk to. That's great. But if using a spreadsheet is not enough for you, then I suggest you invest in a tool like Pipedrive, which is really simple, but really good at analyzing your pipeline of people you're reaching out to. Okay, so that was a little bit about process. Now, when you say be picky, Howie, what does it mean in terms of which companies to join? So pictured here is Professor Andy Ratcliffe from Stanford, who also is a co-founder of Wealthfront, which is a company that has achieved unicorn status, which means it's got a valuation of $1 billion or more. And he made an observation that really resonated with me. He said that, back in 2006, 2007, he had some students in business school who had job offers with well-known firms, but also had a job offer from this small firm called Facebook, about $50 million in revenue. And he said, what was the optimal choice for those students? Should they have gone to the well-known firm, or should they have gone to this mid-sized company? And his argument is they should have gone to Facebook. And so there's a lot to why that is, but basically it's just about opportunity. It's that if you are part of the Facebook rocket ship from back in 2006, there's a lot of opportunity. There's a big halo effect for you of people thinking that you're, an important part of that journey, and kind of maximizing the opportunity over the prestige of the well-known company. So Andy has been publishing he calls it career launching companies, a career launching companies list for several years. It's a great resource. Look it up. And the way he qualifies companies on the list is, between $20 and $300 million at really, really high growth rates, 50% or more, and doing well financially. And, a lot of people call these rocket ships. And I think Eric Schmidt formerly of Google, had a quote which was along the lines of, if somebody offers you a spot on a rocket ship, don't worry so much about which seat you're going to take. Just get on the rocket ship and figure it out. So Andy summarizes things this way. Above everything else, your choice of company is the most important thing. So that's one person's perspective. I tend to agree with Andy, and I think that when I say be picky, you want to pick companies that might fit into this mold. And Andy's done a really nice thing for everyone. He puts together this list every year, and you can Google it and find it. It's usually about 100 companies. And in fact, one of the lists I analyzed from a couple years ago. I analyzed the list a couple years ago. And I looked at the states that the startups were in, that the companies were in. And this kind of blew me away. I mean, California, especially the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, is known for having an advantage. There's a lot of venture capital dollars there. There's a lot of startups there. And this surprised me that probably as a result of all that venture capital and all those startups, the companies that have grown and have momentum and fit Andy's list tend to be clustered in California as well. And I think the breakdown here of San Francisco, Bay Area versus Los Angeles, so Northern California versus Southern California, I think it was like 90 to 95% Northern California. Almost all of these companies in California are in Northern California. Um, Here's just another list, a breakout list. This is another kind of list that is trying to do exactly what Andy is doing. So there's other lists out there, and you can, and you should search for those, especially as you're coming up with your own list of 20 to 50 or 150 companies that you want to work for. So when I was thinking about California and the Bay Area in particular, I ran across this infographic, and it struck me that, wow, I think it's also true that um, a lot of the big tech companies are in the Bay Area. I think we know this is true just kind of through shows like Silicon Valley and just kind of word of mouth that there's a lot going on in the Bay Area. But this infographic really drove it home for me. And if you haven't been to the San Francisco Bay Area, you should definitely go, because when you drive around and you just so happen to drive by Apple's headquarters and Google's headquarters and Facebook's headquarters, and you know, um, just kind of casually driving by all these huge companies, it's striking. It's really striking. And so um, there are a ton of billion-dollar companies. There are a ton of $10 billion companies in the Bay Area. There are a ton of $100 billion companies. Maybe ton is too strong there, but there are a lot compared to other areas of the country and the world. And down below near San Jose, that's kind of more known as Silicon Valley. There's a lot of tech companies, but San Francisco itself, which is at the top there, all those red dots, the density of companies in San Francisco is it's kind of astounding. When you look at lists of startup companies that are based in San Francisco, it's it's a lot. It is a lot. So, what does this have to do with starting a company? Um, and if you're an MBA Duke MBA student and you're thinking of starting a company eventually, um, you know, is it the wrong choice to work at a tech company, or to work at a startup company? Maybe you should just start right now, and that's valid. That's valid, and we do have Duke MBA students that work on starting companies every year, and um, I think that it does happen, especially when financing lines up, because most MBA students do have debt. Um, so it does end up happening. But this is an interesting study from a data scientist, Monica Rogati, who worked at LinkedIn and analyzed tens of thousands of entrepreneurs. And it's a really cool infographic. I'm only showing you one portion here. But essentially, what she found out from first-time founders, first-time startup founders, is that for the most part, they had worked at a big tech company for 2.5 years just before starting their company. Um, and the top startup regions that she found were San Francisco, not surprising, but also New York City and Boston. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So I'm going to jump now to AngelList, which I'm going to guess most of you are not familiar with. AngelList is this amazing resource, which is um, put simply, it's a great directory of all the startups that are out there. Maybe not all the startups, but pretty much all the startups that are out there in the world. So, you know, if you're interested in looking at startups or for startups, AngelList is an amazing resource. And so I just updated my images today. So in Northern California, the San Francisco Bay Area, there are 38,000 companies, mostly startups, but this also includes some bigger companies and venture capital firms. But 38,000, which is a lot. And in contrast, let's look at New York City, 22,000, which also is quite a bit, but that's about 60% of what's in the Bay Area. And if you want to look up your own city that you're targeting, which I encourage you to do, then I would suggest you go to angel.co/locations and look it up. This data is a little bit old, from 2016, so the numbers are smaller because I think they've just expanded their search. And also, I think I filtered more distinctly here. Here I was filtering on San Francisco specifically, not Northern California, so San Francisco proper. And this list always surprises people, especially people that are thinking of other cities in the country to live and work in. That there's such a steep drop off, from San Francisco and New York City down to, say, Seattle, which is a great city, a great tech city, Austin as well. There's a pretty steep drop off. I mean, from Seattle to San Francisco Bay Area, that's like a 10-to-1 ratio. And maybe if you count Northern California versus the greater Seattle area, I bet that ratio is much higher than 10-to-1, actually. So as you're picking, I think you want to be mindful of which cities you're looking in. And the reason for that is that it's hard to do a multi-city job search. It's hard. You need to spend time in the city. And if you have 4 cities that you're trying to do a job search in, it's hard to book trips to 4 different cities while you're also getting your MBA. There's just not enough time. So I think you do want to be picky about, for the industry you're targeting, which city is a really good city that matches your industry. And then you have to combine that with your own personal preferences of where you want to live. AngelList has developed a pretty great job platform over the last several years. And I'd encourage you all to go ahead and sign up. It's pretty easy. You can upload your resume and it'll parse your resume into different parts. Here's just a couple of points on their application. So I really like this. I know that I like this question. What are the markets you're most interested in working in? One thing that a lot of Duke MBA students struggle with is a lot of them haven't focused in yet on one industry. And they might have 2 or 3 or they might just say, I don't know. So I think that this is good to do this exercise. And just as in city, I would highly recommend that if you can hone in on one industry, I think that will give you some amount of focus that will help you be more effective in your job search. Because just as it's hard to recruit in 4 different cities, I think it's hard to recruit in 4 different industries, and especially be good at all of those, and also have the research down pat for each of those industries. So in my preference, you choose one industry, but everyone's got to find their own way. So I did a couple very basic searches. I said, what are the internships out there? Not specific to MBAs, just what are the internships out there that will sponsor visas? I know that there are many international students that are interested in startups. So on AngelList, there's 123 startups that apparently will do that. And I said, what about internships just in business development. So this is without a visa sponsorship. There's 825 startups that are looking for interns. So here you start to see, well, maybe I can get to, 20 to 50 companies or 150 companies. Unfortunately, for international students, that 825 drops down to 18 for people that will formally sponsor a visa. Now, I do know of cases where a student will work at a company, an international student will work at a company, and that company will say, "You're amazing," and they explore the process of applying for a visa together. And, you know, I know that that can happen. And I had a student just last year or 2 years ago where that happened. And the company said, "We've never sponsored a visa before, but let's try to figure it out and let's apply." Um, I think that's rare, but it does happen. It does happen. Okay, what about just full-time? Um, Full-time positions. So again, this is not filtered for MBA students, and this is not filtered for visa sponsorship. So 18,392 startups on AngelList are recruiting, um, which again will be very helpful towards finding 150 companies you want to work for. When you look at which ones will sponsor, that drops down to 1,800. So about 10%. Okay, so I'm going to now introduce you to Duke Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which is based in downtown Durham. And there are lots of resources for Fuqua students that you should consider taking advantage of. I'm also going to talk about um, the Duke Office of Licensing and Ventures, which is separate from INE, but let's just get started. So Duke INE has been around since about 2013, and we've got beautiful office space in downtown Durham. If you know where Pizzeria Toro is, or Cafe BU, it's about 2 blocks north, heading towards Cocoa Cinnamon. We have beautiful office space. Students are always welcome to come and work from our office space, especially if you live nearby. It can be a great place to be. You can also play pool. We've got a lot of events that come through our office space, and sometimes when students are starting companies, they end up working from this office space every day with their team, and that's always fun. That's always fun to see and work with those teams. Let's talk about the Duke Angel Network. So the Duke Angel Network is housed in the Duke Innovation and Entrepreneurship Initiative, and it's been around for about 3 years, since about 2015, I believe. And it's a member organization. So members of the Duke Angel Network, mostly Duke alumni that are wealthy individuals, pay a $1,000 membership fee, and those members are scattered around the country. I think there's about 125, more than 125, and there are some international members as well. And here is a portfolio of the Duke Angel Network. Not all the companies, but I think all the ones that are publicly known. And you can see that there's a variety of industries here. So let me just talk through some of those for you. So Testiv, and by the way, most of these companies were founded by Duke alums. Some have looser connections. Maybe an exec on the management team is a Duke alum, or maybe a board member is a Duke alum. But for the most part, these are founded by Duke alums. And so Testiv, founded by a Duke alum, Tom Rose, they provide an online platform for SAT and ACT online testing. LifeFlow, this is a medical device that was developed locally, an effort of including NC State, UNC, and Duke. And for those people that are in need of fluids in a hospital setting, an IV bag, which is full of saline, is sometimes too slow to replenish the fluids that a person needs. So this device, pictured here, really speeds up that process. Babies is a company based on technology that spun out of Duke's electrical and computer engineering department. And it's a pretty amazing company that does newborn testing for hundreds of diseases so that babies that have those diseases can start treatment early on. And the amazing thing about this is it only takes a small, tiny amount of blood from the newborn. And their devices look like this. And this image here is much better when you see the video, which is actually available on Vimeo, Vimeo.com, if you type in advanced liquid logic. But basically, this is the technology that came out of Duke, microfluidics. And what this is you're moving liquid on a chip using electricity. So there's no physical mechanism that's moving the liquid. It's just electricity. And so this is why you can take a tiny amount of blood from a newborn, run a lot of tests for that newborn, and be able to help detect diseases much earlier on. So it's literally saving babies' lives. Mati is a healthy energy drink that was started by a Duke undergrad. It's a delicious drink. I'm a huge fan. And they actually sell it at Fuqua. On the right, as you're about to approach the cashier, in the main food area, the food prep area, look to the right, and there's Mati in the refrigerator case by the windows. Carbon robotics. The idea here is that robotics are coming and exist right now, and carbon robotics is making a very simple to use, very low cost arm that is easily programmable. And so that's a really neat company. They're based in San Francisco. Innovask. So this is technology that came out of Duke. And there's actually a Duke MBA alum, Joe Knight, who is the CEO of this company. Joe went to work at Medtronic in Medtronic's rotational program after graduating from Fuqua. So Innovask solves a problem for people that are on dialysis and need to have their veins poked regularly. So what already happens is that their veins are supplemented with a tube, which is implanted under the skin. But the problem with the tube is that after you prick it with a needle again and again, the tube basically starts to have problems. It starts to have holes, and this causes many, many issues. So this is a tube which has a special material that can heal itself after you prick it with a needle, but also it has a hard back so that the needle can't go through the tube. So it's a really great device. Okay, let's switch over now to the Office of Licensing Adventures. By the way, that footer there that says Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation is that's a mistake. I shouldn't have had that on there. So the Duke Office of Licensing Adventures is its own entity. Is not related to the School of Business. Is not related to I&E, though we are good friends, which is great. And so the Office of Licensing Adventures, or OLV, is the tech transfer office, which means that they are the owners of all technology developed at Duke by Duke faculty, particularly Duke faculty that are that have won money in the form of grants from governmental agencies to do research. Over the last 10 years, 77 companies have spun out of Duke based on these technologies. 2.8 billion in financing and 8 IPOs. And there's a new venture fellows program that's run by one of my Fuqua friends from business school, Rob Halford, who's class of 2005. And Rob takes Duke MBA students and hires them to work with these technology spinouts. Also, I should make a note that Ryan Frew, a Fuqua alum, works at the Duke Angel Network and has a similar program where the Duke Angel Network takes Duke MBA alums to work on startups that are applying to the Duke Angel Network. So, what are some of the companies that have spun out of the Office of Licensing and Ventures? Precision Biosciences. The CEO is a Fuqua alum, Matt Kane, and the technology is created by a couple of people that went to school at Duke or worked at Duke as postdocs. This is an amazing technology that lets you edit genes. It's called ARCUS. Some of you might be familiar with CRISPR, and so ARCUS is technology similar to CRISPR, but it's proprietary to this company, Precision Biosciences. So they're doing some amazing stuff. They recently raised $100 million, I think, at $1 billion valuation, and just some great things going on. This company is based in downtown Durham. Chimeta is a company that's done really well and has gained a lot of notoriety. They have some metamaterials which came out of Duke, and they can do a lot of really interesting things with metamaterials. And I don't know enough to explain it, so I'm not going to try. Unravel. So this is a Duke MBA student who partnered with a Duke computer science professor to create a technology that basically helps big data be used much more quickly and more efficiently. So Unravel, they ended up going out to San Francisco, joined an accelerator there, and then and they've done well ever since then. They've been going for several years now, 5-6 years. Keela Health. This is a new startup started by Bora Chang and a couple of researchers from Duke Medicine whose names escape me at the moment. Sorry, guys. So Keela Health, so Bora graduated from the School of Medicine and decided, you know what, I'm going to give up on my path of becoming a physician and I'm going to start this company. And so basically whenever a patient goes into surgery, there are various interventions that they are supposed to get. And the method for assigning interventions to a patient are very rough right now, only taking in a couple factors. Maybe like this patient is 60 years old, so when they go into surgery, we should do X, Y, and Z interventions. So Keela Health uses artificial intelligence to take more inputs about the patient. Maybe they are overweight, maybe they have diabetes, and assigns more specific interventions for that patient. And they just went through the Cedars-Sinai Accelerator in Los Angeles, and they're on their way. Infinia, this is for those of you interested in machine learning, data science, and they're basically applying machine learning for business. Humacyte, this is a company that's spun out of Duke maybe 12 or 13 years ago. Pretty amazing company. They just raised a big round of funding. I don't remember how much at this moment. And Humacyte is making veins and arteries, I think both veins and arteries, from existing cells. So right now, if you need a vein or artery to replace a vein or artery in your body, they will basically, move a vein from one part of your body, say your leg, up to wherever it is in your body that you need it. So here, Humacyte is actually growing veins and arteries, and if memory serves me, they're growing it from your own cells, which is pretty amazing. Okay, shifting gears here, and again, I apologize. The footer that shows our center It's not meant to be on all of these slides, although, whoops, although, we're happy to support all these groups here. So Scott Wingo is a local entrepreneur, uh, possibly the area's best entrepreneur, and an all-around great guy. He started a company called Channel Advisor, which is a public company. So he's been publishing this list that he calls the Triangle Tweener list. The tweeners are companies that are at $1 million a year in sales and about 10 people, and up to 80 million a year and 500 people. So this is a great list. For many of you, you're thinking about, maybe I should work locally at a company. Maybe I'll do that through my through the mentored study program with Ben Thomason, another classmate of mine. Or maybe I'll do it informally. Maybe I'll just, work for a company. I think that's a good option, and it's something I did as a student. And so let's dive in. So some of the companies on the tweener list include First. First is started by a Duke alum, Mike Schneider, who just raised, I think, $4 million. This is a really interesting artificial intelligence company that takes a lot of data streams and tells real estate agents, of all the people in your personal network, who are the people that are most likely to buy or sell a house. So basically gives you a list of people that you should say, let's go grab coffee, people that you already know. So it's a really neat company. AdWorks, started by a Fuqua alum, Jed Carlson, a friend of mine. He was class of 2005. We were friends in business school. He's the same class as Rob Halford of the Office of Licensing and Ventures. So AdWorks spun out of a company he co-founded called Reverb Nation, which is also on this tweener list. Reverb Nation, he started after business school, has about 4 million musicians that use that technology. And AdWorks was a way for musicians to retarget their fans to come to shows and concerts. So AdWorks takes that same idea of retargeting ads, but uses it for real estate agents to sell houses, but to also sell themselves. Because it turns out that most people who are looking to buy or sell a home, they hire the first real estate agent that they talk to. So AdWorks is a really interesting business. Written Word Media, Duke MBA alum Farrell Vernon and his wife Ricky Woolman run this company. They're based at the American Underground, which is in downtown Durham. Great co-working space. So this is a company that has hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions at this point, on their lists. And they send out books to those lists every day saying, hey, here's some great books for today. And this drives a ton of traffic to those books, and it helps those authors. So authors actually pay Written Word Media to get their books on these lists. It's a really interesting model. Brooks Bell. Brooks Bell is a Duke alum. She has built this amazing business. They're basically the top consulting firm for optimization programs. In layman's terms, I think they are like the best firm that helps companies do A/B split testing, which means that you get 50,000 users to look at a website where the button is green, and 50,000 users to look at a website where the button is blue, and you figure out which color button is the better one for getting them to click on the button. She's run this business for over a decade, and she's also been really important to the city of Raleigh. She, along with her husband, Jesse Lipson, who's also a successful entrepreneur, Brooks and Jesse co-founded HQ Raleigh in the city of Raleigh, which is an amazing co-working space with several locations, absolutely beautiful and instrumental to the Raleigh startup scene. Mix. This is a company started by a Duke alum, Monica Wood. And Mix works with companies like Harris Teeter, grocery store, to help people create shopping lists and add recipes to their list, and to buy the branded products in the store. So it's a neat company. Dog Nation, started by a Duke professor, Brian Hare, who works with dogs and the personality types and intelligence of dogs. So if you are a dog lover or dog owner, you can give this test to your dog and learn more about their personality. Kind of like I think it's kind of like a Myers-Briggs for your dog. Food Logic, not started by a Duke alum, but there's a Duke alum who has a senior position there. So Food Logic works to track supply chain. So if you remember, Chipotle, the restaurant, a year or so ago, had a big problem where there was a disease outbreak linked to Chipotle. And so Food Logic has the technology and processes in place for companies to know where exactly did their food come from. Spiffy, this is the latest company from Scott Wingo, who created this list, and I just wanted to give him some respect and highlight this company for those Duke MBAs that are might be interested in working here. So Scott's previous company, Channel Advisor, was all about business-to-business e-commerce. Spiffy is totally different. This is a set of mobile car wash vans that come to you at your workplace or your home and will wash your car for you while you are at work or at home. Really cool idea, and they're doing well. They've already expanded to at least one other city in Texas, and but they started here in North Carolina, and it's a really interesting model. I think that he's really hit on something here. K4 Connect. This is a company that works with senior citizens and senior citizen homes, assisted living homes, using the Internet of Things and technology, software and hardware, to make their lives easier and to help everything run smoothly. I think there's a lot of monitoring, if I remember correctly. The president of this company is a Duke alum named Derek Holt. The founder of this company is a entrepreneur named Scott Moody. Great guy. Scott is the person that started Authentic, which is the creator of the Touch ID sensor. The Touch ID sensor was acquired. Authentic was acquired by Apple. So Scott has been a very successful entrepreneur. Kiona Health, one of the management team people here is a Fuqua alum, Stephen Dean, and Kiona works with clinics like pediatricians, other clinics, to take calls and to help the nursing staff to get better answers for their patients. LCMS, this is started by a Duke alum, Allison Wood, and spun out with technology out of Duke. So this is a ed tech startup, education technology, which helps run your entire healthcare education on one platform. So I believe that their clients are medical schools and nursing schools. I hope I got that right, Allison. Shift Wizard. This is a company that is run by a Duke alum, Joe Velk. Joe has been a longtime investor in the area. And Shift Wizard solves a problem where nurses have a huge pain point in trying to schedule their shifts. Shift Wizard makes that process easier for everybody. Sports Endeavors started years ago by the Moylan brothers, of which they went to Duke. At least one of them went to Duke. I think maybe both of them went to Duke. And the Moylan brothers, this started as one of their main brands was soccer.com. And for those of you who grew up playing soccer, particularly in the United States, you probably ordered some soccer gear from them. So they are a local company that's been around for, I think, at least 2 decades, and they're doing well. Spreedly, this is not started by a Duke alum, but it's started by a great guy, Justin Benson. And basically, you integrate once with Spreedly for your payments, and you can then handle payments across a variety of countries and a variety of different services. So integrate once with Spreedly, and you can take payments from everybody. Teamworks. This is started by a Duke football alum, Zach Baridis. Zach was tired of running stairs in the stadium for being late to practice because he didn't know what time practice was because they didn't have a communications platform for the football team to know when practice was or if it changed times, things like that. So he said, I'm going to fix that. And this is a communication platform that helps coaches and players and everybody know what's going on. And it's been very successful. It's been adopted across many college sports, but also professional sports as well. And Zach's offices are in downtown Durham. Okay, switching gears here. So one other thing you can get from Duke I&E is you can access our list of 400 mentors who are opted in to this alumni network. You can see the link there, duke.firsthand.co. And you can reach out to them and it sends them a note, and you can see their background. You can do some searches to find out where they are, where they've worked. And it's a great service, a great thing that you as a student can take advantage of right now. Another thing is that I have all these lists that I've cultivated over time. I need to make more lists, but lists of different cities and geographies where I've curated a lot of the Duke alums that are in that city or geography, and lists of a lot of industries, blockchain, fintech, fashion, sports, real estate. I've curated a lot of Duke alums that work in startups in those industries, and I share these lists pretty regularly with Duke students to try to help you advance your connections. Okay, so in summary, the process: be picky, but choose a lot. You got to start by finding at least 20 to 50 companies you'd love to work at, and then network. Find the key person. Use Clearbit Connect to get their email address. Email them directly using my sample email, and then keep track of all those conversations. I recommend you keep track of all those conversations in a spreadsheet like this, where you have kind of your key questions in column A, and then for every person you talk to, to the degree that you can in a conversation, you cover these questions, and you collect their opinions over time, and this helps you make sense of multiple opinions, sometimes which can be the exact opposite opinion. Some next steps I'd recommend. If you're really interested in tech, you probably should visit the Bay Area, and maybe visit the Bay Area often, or whatever preferred city you have. Network again. I think that as you get an internship or a full-time job, you should get the best learning experience you can. Set yourself up for the rest of your career. And, MBA salaries should be affordable once the company gets to 50. And Andy Ratcliffe has this great phrase, which I agree with completely. You got to develop an expertise. You got to get really, really good at something that is in high demand. Um, Organize your own city visit. So I know there's these tech treks that are great and that have been going on for years. And in fact, I've helped to get those organized over the years, which is great. But organize your own. Go ahead and find 15 cities in San Francisco or in New York City. Spend 5 days there and organize 3 informational meetings a day. I recommend this to students a lot. A lot of students are nervous about doing this, which is understandable. But the ones that do it um, almost always come back and say what an amazing experience it was. So don't be shy. Organize your own city visit. And I love meeting students. Let's meet. I do virtual office hours for Fuqua students at 9:30 p.m. on Wednesdays. Mostly we talk startups. It's mostly for students in the program for entrepreneurs, but if you have career questions, you're welcome to join in. I do have an office at Fuqua and one at our downtown offices on Moore Street. And I look forward to seeing you. Feel free to send me an email. Thanks for watching. Take care.